Aston Martin, one of the most iconic car brands to have ever existed. Aston Martin, better known as 007's ride. With a history dating back over 100 years, the brand has become a British icon. In this video, we are taking a look at the incredible story of Aston Martin. But before we continue, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of new behind the business videos that we post every week. Let's begin. It all started in 1912, where two British cycling enthusiasts by the name of Lionel Martin and Robert Bamford met in London. Over time, the two became really close friends, and Lionel, who had been selling cars for Singer for around 10 years, invited him into his business. Not only were the two selling Singer cars, but they also serviced GWK and Calthorpe cars, which gave them a lot of industry expertise that was impossible to find in the early 20th century, but more importantly, grew their love for cars. With their love for cars came the love for racing, and the duo began to race a lot of their cars on Aston Hill near the village of Aston Clinton in Buckinghamshire, England. Soon enough, the pair realized that the cars they drove and sold simply weren't good enough. And as their friendship grew even deeper and their expertise in the field got stronger, they decided to solve that problem and built their own car. The prototype of their first car was called the Aston Martin, with Martin coming from the last name of Lionel Martin, and Aston as Lionel had come into success racing on that hill. Although, to be fair, the car wasn't really revolutionary. It had the body of a 1908 Isotta Fraschini with a 4-cylinder Coventry simplex engine, along with some other modifications. Soon enough, they started to work on their first actual car. The first model of this car was made in 1915, and it was planned to go into production a few years later. But that day never came thanks to World War I, and the Aston Martin project was put on hold. After the war ended in 1918, the pair had planned on reviving their car business. They bought a new production facility on Abingdon Road in Kensington, and the company was officially named Bamford & Martin. However, Bamford eventually left the company in 1920, leaving Lionel Martin in limbo without any partner to run the business with. But with the 1922 French Grand Prix approaching, Martin decided to go all in and participate in the race. Surprisingly, he was able to secure some funding from a racing enthusiast named Count Louis Zborowski, and the company was able to get on its own 2 feet once again. With that funding, Martin produced numerous cars for the Grand Prix, including the Green Pea, the Razor Blade, and the Halford Special. And that turned things around because from 1920 to 1924, he managed to sell around 55 cars, primarily for racing purposes. Many of these cars would go on to set speed records, turning Martin into a notable name in the automotive industry early on, despite him not having massive production facilities. However, the cost of making these cars was simply too much, and without a solid consumer base, Bamford & Martin had gone bankrupt. By 1925, Martin was forced to find a buyer for the troubled company. And although the name Aston Martin stuck, the company was in a constant shuffle of owners. From 1926 to 1937, the company experimented with a lot of different car models and a lot of different owners as well. It was unstable to say the least, but it was at least afloat business-wise. Soon enough, World War II would halt all car production for Aston Martin, and it seemed like the company was now as good as gone for good. However, with a stroke of luck, Aston Martin was able to keep afloat as the company used its production facilities to help make aircraft components, and doing so brought a lot of capital and production expertise into the company. Subsequently, after the war ended, production of Aston Martin cars slowly resumed, but the war had taken its toll not only on the company but the economy as well, and no one was buying cars. When 1932 came rolling around, Aston Martin fell into financial problems once again, and was forced to put up an ad in the paper to once again find a new owner for the company. The classified ad, simply titled "High-Class Motor Business with an Asking Price of £30,000, soon found its way to a man named David Brown, who only realized that it was Aston Martin after inquiring further. He quickly arranged a visit to the place of business, and with a test drive and some negotiation, he managed to acquire Aston Martin for approximately £20,000. Aston Martin was quickly placed under the David Brown Tractor Group, which in return gave the company more resources than it ever had in the past. Around the same time, David Brown also purchased a luxury car manufacturer called Lagonda, and it combined the operations of the two companies. This was around the time that Aston Martin started to produce its DB series of cars. The DB1 was the first car to be made under David Brown, and it featured a V6 Bentley engine along with a fresh new design. This car was not sold to the general public, and it was mainly a way for David Brown to test the waters with Aston Martin. By 1950, an upgraded version of the DB1 called the DB2 was launched, and it was sold to the general public. It was quite a massive success by luxury car standards, and it managed to sell over 400 units. In 1953, a successor called the DB24 was released, and it was an even bigger success, selling 761 units. Slowly but surely, Aston Martin was becoming a huge brand. Some of the richest people in the United Kingdom were now owners of Aston Martins, including royals, businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. The DB Mark III, built from 1957 to 1959, sold over 550 units, and the DB4, built from 1958 to 1963, sold a staggering 1,185 units. Their first car, launched in the 60s, was the DB5. And it happened to coincide with the release of a massively hyped James Bond film called Goldfinger, which the DB5 was heavily featured in the film. And with the popularity from the Bond franchise, it launched the company into international stardom. Aston Martin was now cemented in Hollywood history. Future DB models would also be featured in various British films. And it would get to the point where it would be impossible to find a British film or a film set in Britain that didn't feature an Aston Martin car. This gave rise to the company's legacy as a British cultural icon. Despite the brand becoming so iconic and having so much value, the business side of things for Aston Martin wasn't great. The company had accumulated over £5 million in debt for David Brown, and instead of taking even more loans to increase the brand's prestige, David Brown eventually paid off the debt and sold the company for a measly £101 in 1972. This might seem like a ridiculous number to you, but keep in mind there was a global recession at the time due to the oil embargo, and new emission regulations in the United States meant that it was next to impossible for the company to sell cars there. The company was eventually sold to American businessman Peter Sprague and British investor Alan Curtis for £1.05 million in 1975. 2 years later, in 1977, Aston Martin developed what was dubbed as the first British supercar, the Aston Martin Vantage. They also had plans to create other supercars, but they were eventually deemed too financially difficult. They still weren't selling many cars, but the prestige of the brand only continued to grow because of these models. The company was sold again in 1981 to Victor Gauntlett, a petroleum magnate, for £500,000. At that time, Aston Martin produced 4 different models: the AM V8, Lagonda, V8 Vantage, and Volante. Neither of these vehicles were selling like hotcakes, but they were seen as the ultimate car one could have, and they were globally praised for their design, speed, and performance. In 1982, the Prince of Wales granted Aston Martin a royal warrant of appointment, which meant that the company would officially supply vehicles to the royal family, something that only added to the brand's prestige. For the following years, Gauntlett would work day in and day out trying to secure more investors for the company, which he desperately needed, while also working towards creating a stronger brand image for the company. In 1986, Gauntlett was successful in his attempt to have the car return to the James Bond series. And after 1987's The Living Daylights was released, Aston Martin started to reach new heights as a brand. Around the time the new James Bond film was released, it was clear that the brand needed a major backer if it wanted to stay afloat. And in the end, Aston Martin was sold to the Ford Motor Company. With this new backer, Ford increased production numbers for Aston Martin, built a new factory, and introduced the Vantage to the world. Aston Martin was doing well and announced that it was going back into motor racing with a division called Aston Martin Racing. This rallied crowds again as Aston was returning to its roots. Over the years, Aston Martin still constantly swapped hands, but not due to financial troubles, but instead as a desirable asset in the form of an automotive company. In the year 2013, it signed a partnership with the Mercedes-Benz Group to supply the next generation of Aston Martin cars with Mercedes-AMG engines. The first model being the DB11, which new design direction really captured the world. Subsequently, in 2020, the Canadian billionaire Lawrence Stroll led a consortium to buy over 16.7% stake in the company. which also led to the start of the Aston Martin Formula One team. So as you can see, it's almost as if Aston Martin has made a full circle recovery and are at the top of their game, producing and selling one of the most desirable cars in the world, at the same time racing in one of the most prestigious racing classes in the world. All that said, it's safe to say that it is really just the beginning of great things for Aston Martin. What a beautiful brand. So do let us know which is your favorite Aston Martin model. Do leave us a comment down below and let's see which is the top pick. My money is on the classic DB5.